to the Acton Agenda. I'm Steve Ledoux. I'm the town manager here in Acton, and this is a show about the Board of Selectmen agenda for July 25th, 2016. With me this evening is Janet Adachi. She's the vice chair of the Board of Selectmen and is just starting your third term, right? Your third term on the
Yes.
On the Board of Selectmen. So this is our second show, something we're trying to do to let our citizens know about what's on the Selectmen's agenda, what is some of the background involving items on the Selectmen's agenda. And starting with our next show, which will be for the Selectmen's meeting of August 8th, we're going to be able to answer some questions if any of the viewers want to send them in. And if you are interested in sending us some questions, you can send them on Twitter, and the address would be @ActonTV1, or email questions@actontv.org. And we'll be able to answer some of your questions as time permits on the August 8th show. So Janet, why don't I turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manager, or Steve, I should say. I think that the format probably is going to evolve as time goes on, and so we're going to change the format a little bit for this segment, give you an opportunity to actually talk, and maybe seek to abbreviate it a bit, but there will be a section where you and I go back and forth, and then I think we'll conclude with the consent agenda where I just quickly summarize what's in it, but a lot of the items are standard things. So with that, why don't we start with the public hearings and appointments. We have a dangerous dog hearing. Do you want to update us
Sure.
on what's going on with that?
Dangerous dog hearings are always one of my favorite things in the whole world because it's just always a very contentious thing, and I think it's one of the tough things the selectmen have to deal with. Under state law, if a dog is deemed dangerous, a Board of Selectmen have the authority to hold a hearing and make decisions on the dog, anything from muzzling to even euthanasia. So it can be a very serious thing, and we know how people feel about their pets. This particular situation involves a dog attack on Strawberry Hill Road. The owner lives at 14 Strawberry Hill Road. The dog allegedly attacked another dog and had to get pulled away. It's our understanding that the owner of the dog is trying to relocate the dog to a new owner in another town. As of this moment, we don't know if that's occurred or not, so we could be in a situation where the selectmen will either open the hearing and continue it pending this dog getting placed out of town, or close the hearing if we have some evidence that the dog has been placed out of town. So this is evolving. Probably as we get into Monday, we'll know more information about how we're gonna proceed with it.
Now, for the benefit of our audience, could you just explain who might be the witnesses? We typically have witnesses at these dog hearings to help the selectmen in working through the legal issues.
Right.
So who is likely to show up?
Well, the owner of the dog obviously is invited, so that person can be there to talk about it from their perspective. Any witnesses, for example, the person that was walking their dog that got attacked, the dog officer who investigated that, or animal control officer, I should say, Tack Palmer will probably be there as well, and I'm not sure there's any other witnesses, but usually witnesses are there, the board swears them in, so everybody's under oath just like in a court.
Great. So there is a reason to watch our meeting either live in room 204 of Town Hall or on television. All right, why don't we get to selectmen's business? These are not subject to any kind of time constraints, so often we take these items out of order. The first item is business inventory database presentation. Larry Keena, Economic Development Committee. What's that about?
Well, the Economic Development Committee is a town committee that is really out to help promote and assist the business community in town. They have a project they're working with our land use economic development director to go out and try to have an inventory and create a database of all the town businesses, who the business is, how many employees they have, things like that, just so we have a better ability to do an outreach if we need to reach out to businesses and things like that. It's not a database that we're going to sell to private vendors or anything to approach the businesses. It's really for our own internal use and just to get a better sense of, you know, how many businesses do we have, how many people are employed in town. It's just really hard to get that information in one single place. So Larry's going to be there to talk about the project, talk about how it's going to work. They'll be utilizing volunteers to go to the various businesses and basically make the Board of Selectmen aware and hopefully get the board's endorsement of the project.
Well, that'll be great because I know that project has been a long time in the making. Okay, but next item, this is a really interesting one. Discussion on letter of non-opposition for Mass Wellspring, and I know this is the marijuana, medical marijuana issue. I know the board saw these people earlier, and so maybe you could help update people on what this is about.
Correct. Well, this is in regard to the law change that happened, I think, a couple of years ago now at the ballot that allowed for a dispensing of medicinal marijuana in Massachusetts. Massachusetts Wellspring, that a year ago, they were actually known as New England Wellspring at that time, came in front of the Board of Selectmen. Under the regulations that the Massachusetts Department of Public Health has put together, the potential host and community can take several actions. One, that they endorse the placement of a facility in the town, or they can write a letter of non-opposition, or they can oppose it. When Mass Wellspring came in front of us just about a year ago, the Board of Selectmen opted to write a letter of non-opposition, which we did. At that point in time, they had no location as to where they were proposing to do the operation. Now that Governor Baker's been in place for a while, they've revised the Department of Public Health regulations so that a specific site has to be mentioned in any letter, whether it's Department of, whether it's a opposition or a non-opposition letter or whatever the case may be. So the proponents are coming in front of the board Monday night. They do have a location. My understanding is they have a purchase and sale on this location. It's 18 Powder Mill Road. It's, for those of you who wonder where that is, it's currently a liquor store. It's kind of the Swiss Chalet looking liquor store that's I think the last national wine and whatever, and it's almost across from Wendy's. So that's the site they'll be looking at. So the board will hear what they have to say, decide if they want to do another letter of non-opposition or whatever the case may be. The Deputy Police Chief, Richard Burrows, will be present to answer any questions. And just so the viewers know that municipal marijuana will be highly regulated, that you have to have an appointment even to go in and get a prescription filled. People off the street can't walk in. There's a high level of security measures. So they'll, once again, will be in front of the board to talk about what they're going to do, what their plans are, whether they're going to keep that building or build a new building, and things like that.
Well, yet another reason for people to tune in to our meeting either in person or on television, because Deputy Police Chief Burrows will be there. And I think a number of towns have probably adopted or allowed medical marijuana facilities in their boundaries, and so that'll be interesting to hear about. Okay, next item, town bylaw, sewer setting, sorry, fiscal 17 sewer O&M rate setting.
Right, and O&M means operation and maintenance. So in essence, our sewers are what is called an enterprise fund. So in essence, the income from the sewer rates have to pay for the operation. We have about 960 or 70 customers on the sewer system, and annually the board sets this rate. The rate is being proposed to stay the same for this fiscal year. I think we've kept it the same for about 4 years, which means the residential rate is 0.1215 cents per cubic foot. Commercial will be 0.1727 cents per cubic foot, and industrial will be also 0.1727 per cubic foot. So that it stays the same. And that'll be the recommendation we're giving to the Board of
Okay,
Selectmen.
now I understand that the sewer district actually encompasses about 11% of the town. Obviously, there have been various efforts at different times to expand the district. But what is the basis for people, because most people aren't on the sewer system, what is the basis for determining what the bill is going to be?
Well, the basis basically is the rate I just cited. It's based on your water meter reading, but we utilize the winter water meter reading, and the main reason that's done is one, it is somewhat beneficial because folks do presumably use less water in the winter because they're not watering lawns and gardens and things like that, and that's usual and customary. So for most cities and towns that do have sewer rates, so it basically is the amount of water you use on a cubic foot basis times the rate I just cited.
So the less water you use, the lower your bill should be.
Correct.
And what do you think the impact? You have any idea what the impact will be for the coming year? Do people lower bills, maybe?
Well, it'll probably be about the same, assuming people use the same amount of water. I think the finance director told me that the average sewer bill is like $65 a month for the average home.
Okay. Okay, very good. Now, town bylaw change discussion, appointment of assistant town moderator and use of electronic voting at town meeting. Two big changes proposed.
Well, as you know, we have a new town moderator, Peter Acton. He was elected in March, and he has a couple ideas for trying to make town meeting more efficient. So one of the things that he's going to actually be at the Board of Selectmen's meeting Monday night to talk about is to have a bylaw that would allow him to appoint an assistant town moderator. The way the state law works right now is that if there's a need, and usually it's because the moderator either has a conflict of interest or the moderator's sick, town meeting has to vote the moderator in every time. I think Peter would just like to have a kind of a standing assistant moderator so that if any of those type of situations come up, there's somebody that's knowledgeable, knows how to do it, that's kind of sitting on the bench like a relief pitcher to come in. So that's kind of the thought behind that. The other thing that he is very interested in is the use of electronic voting. There's several towns in Massachusetts now that use the little handheld voting devices for town meeting votes. And talking to town council feels we probably need a bylaw that would allow for that use and perhaps even define how we would use it. My experience in talking to some of my fellow town managers in towns that do that is that where the real value of the electronic voting is when there's very close voice votes where you can't really tell if the ayes or the nays prevail. And in 2/3 votes, because 2/3 is sometimes a little, and right now, we spend a lot of time, hand counting people that are standing up and all that, so this would streamline it. Probably would still use voice votes for the majority of the warrant articles, but any time there's a controversy or it's too close to call, we would use the handheld devices. So, two things that hopefully would improve the functioning of town meeting.
No, it sounds certainly the electronic voting would make the process more efficient with regard to close votes, as you say. I think it could maybe be a detriment if we used it for every single vote, even the ones that were not contested or there was a unanimous vote. So that's great. I know that people in town have been talking about the need for us to move into the 20th century with electronic voting. And final item on the Selectmen's business agenda is discussion of fall town meeting, including closing the town warrant. I know we've gotten some questions about this because some people didn't realize that there was even the prospect of a special town meeting under consideration. Some people are very aware of the prospect and have already assumed that it's set, and they're sort of planning on it, but I don't know if you have anything to add.
Well,
we can have a general discussion.
Well,
about
I
it.
think that the first issue is, what the board is going to talk about is is there a need to have a fall town meeting? Now, we've already kind of have a date, and the only reason we have a date is that it gets exceedingly difficult to schedule space for a town meeting during the school year. There's a lot of things going on at the high school, and in fact, if we have it October 5th, it'll be in the upper gym because they're in the midst of, they keep seeming to do one play after another in the auditorium. So October 5th would be the date if in fact we move ahead. Now, some of the things the selectmen may think about it, and we had this discussion at the last meeting. I given the board a recommendation of a policy on what should be constituted for a special town meeting, and most of it relates to timeliness, that if we waited to annual town meeting, we would lose an opportunity, or like land purchase that might not be available if we waited another 6 months, or whatever the case may be, or some provision of a grant where we'd have to approve or appropriate money, etc. So some of the things we've been talking about, we do have a tentative settlement with our fire union. They have not, the union that is, has not voted the acceptance yet. We've asked them to see if they could get a vote by August 8th, which is probably the drop dead date for the selectmen calling a town meeting. We are reviewing potential leases for the senior center as we speak, so there might be that issue coming to town meeting. Got these 2 bylaw things we just talked about from the moderator. There's been some debate about increasing the CPA surcharge. That may be held off, I think, based on
because of the litigation.
Because of the litigation,
may not be optimal time to bring that
right.
to the voters. Plus, maybe because it's a money item, it'd be better to have it on the annual town meeting. But
and there is a land purchase that I'm really not at liberty to speak about right now, but because we're in kind of negotiation. But if in fact we do get an agreement, I think the landowner does not want to wait till to the spring town meeting. So those are some of the potential items that are out there at the moment.
And I think it's good that you recommended a set of standards about when to call a special town meeting. I know that to people who aren't involved in the discussion, sometimes it seems haphazard, and certainly in the past year, past fiscal year, we had 3 special town meetings. Some had to do with settlement of litigation. Their Minuteman regional district was reorganizing its regional agreement, and then of course there was a school building proposal. So there were things that really we couldn't put off till later, but it's good to have the policy reduced to writing so that people understand that we do have some standards for why we're calling special town meeting. But let's hope we don't need as many special town meetings in this fiscal year as we had last year.
I mean, and we also had the discussion of maybe having a standing fall town meeting primarily to deal with zoning, because oftentimes at annual town meeting, zoning kind of comes late on the warrant, and people are kind of, their eyes have glazed over by then, and there's not maybe adequate debate about zoning. So I'm not sure there's any real zoning issues being proposed at this time, but that's something we need to maybe keep in our mind for future years.
Good. And then the last item is the consent agenda. Honestly, this is a pretty typical consent agenda. It encompasses committee appointments, approval of meeting minutes. There is a proposed carry-in permit for a new restaurant, Philo's on Great Road, which will replace Bella Familia, which I think some of us were surprised to discover is changing hands. A couple of courts of honor for Eagle Scouts. Traditionally, the selectmen do attend. Those are single selectmen will attend those and pay homage to the Scouts, and also provide a certificate and a commemorative coin reflecting, I guess, the obelisk in the town center on one side, and then the famous motto by Isaac Davis about, "I haven't a man who's afraid to go." So. And then one-day alcoholic beverage license in NARA, that is something we often do. And accepting gifts, we are legally responsible for accepting gifts on behalf of the town. Waiver of fees, Recreation Department for an event at NARA. This is typically with regard to charitable fundraising operation, and then finally the library's request to dispose of obsolete materials, which I think is a standing item in every consent agenda. We typically approve those all in one fell swoop unless somebody holds an item, and then we discuss it and then eventually approve. The carry-in permit, I would just add, is the new owner just was before us this last meeting to get a victualer's license, meaning food service, and the liquor license is pending, but in the interim, he is looking to have permission for customers to carry in liquor. We actually have a bylaw setting out the standards for that, and basically, if you have a liquor license, you can't have a carry-in permit. And you do obviously have to have a legitimate restaurant license. That's what that is about. And I think that's actually there will be selectmen reports, individual selectmen reporting on their liaisons in the packet as always. And I don't have anything else to say. I don't know if you have some more to add.
Not really. So hopefully this little segment has been informative, and clearly if you want more information, be it about medicinal marijuana or what the case is, our meetings start at 7 o'clock in room 204, the top floor of Town Hall. Once again, we'd like to thank everybody for viewing. We'll be doing this show in a couple more weeks for the August 8th meeting. Selectman Franny Osmond is tentatively scheduled to be here with me. And once again, in anticipation of August 8th, if any of you have any questions about town projects, operations, whatever the case may be, you can send those questions in to Twitter at ActonTV1 or email questions@actontv.org. And I want to thank Janet for being on the show, and thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.